Hi, I'm Justine, and I'm here to tell you being mentally ill isn't the end of the world. I know what it's like to live with a mental illness. It's hard. You're constantly trying to hide your struggles from others, and you feel like you're weaker than others because of your illness. But that's not true. So many badasses struggle with mental illnesses, but they don't talk about them because they're afraid of being judged or thought of as weak-minded. Well, guess what? They're not. We can change that by talking openly about our struggles and sharing our stories with each other in a positive light. This is why I created Mentally a Badass, so we can come together as badasses who are also mentally ill or who's had it rough in life and share our stories with one another in a safe place that celebrates our strengths rather than shames our weaknesses. I hope this podcast helps you feel less alone in this crazy life of ours, and I hope it makes your life just a little bit better. Josh Rose is a transformational health coach, trauma-informed plant medicine facilitator, and somatic breathwork practitioner. Josh's journey began over a decade ago when he found himself trapped in a cycle of depression, anxiety, PTSD, and more. He was in chronic pain, battling addictions, and struggling with eating disorders. Frustrated by the limitations of the Western healthcare system, Josh embarked on a quest of natural healing methods that would lead him to a profound transformation. Through deep introspection and the study of psychedelics, plant medicines, mindfulness, shadow work, biohacking, somatic healing, breathwork, spirituality, and more, Josh managed to heal all of his diagnosed chronic conditions within just 6 months. Over the past decade, Josh has touched the lives of over 1,000 individuals through his coaching retreats and transformative programs. His expertise as a trauma-informed facilitator and transformational coach has been instrumental in guiding others towards their own healing and empowerment. Located in Orlando, Florida, Josh collaborates closely with his wife as they co-host ceremonies, retreats, and programs that facilitate profound personal growth and self-discovery. In this episode, we will dive deep into the wisdom and experiences Josh had gained throughout his journey. We'll explore the topics such as holistic healing, overcoming trauma, power of plant medicine, and much more. Whether you're seeking personal growth, struggling with anxiety or addiction, or simply curious about the transformative potential within all of us, this episode is for you. Welcome back to Mentally a Badass. My name is Justine, and today I have my good friend Josh, who I haven't spoken to in a hot minute, but randomly in my brain, I had a thought, and I was like, who'd be really good for the podcast? And I just ran out of nowhere thought of him. We haven't spoken in years, and it was just like, oh, so I reached out to him, and I was like, I don't know if he's gonna actually reply. I'm just randomly sliding into his DMs. And then I remember he said to me, oh my God, I was just thinking about you today. It's still insane, Josh.
Synchronicity.
Yeah, so it was meant to be. So thank you so much for taking your time to be on here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Okay, so again, every episode of Mentally a Badass, we are going to dive deep into your past because that is the reason of where you are today. So let's dig deep. So when I first met you, I was 18 years old and we met through, I believe, a friend or whatever. And I remember you were this like big gym rat and
Mm.
you didn't really talk much. I remember you're actually very intimidating to me. I was like, oh, he's gonna probably be really mean to me because you're like this buff guy, like gym rat, like yeah. But then we connected again a couple years later, and then you came to me and you told me that you were actually very depressed during that time. So I kind of want to talk about that, like how you were feeling during that time and what led you to feeling depressed.
Absolutely. So, first off, during that time when we first met, I was a gym rat. And as you find a lot of people in the world of fitness, I'm not going to make a big generalization for everyone, but on some level, fitness becomes a way for people to cope with their insecurities,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we're insecure, we feel not good enough, we feel unworthy, and we're seeking love and validation through changing our bodies, right? We're trying to change the external in order to change the internal. So I developed an obsession and an addiction for fitness. And I don't know if I ever told you this, but during that time on the outside, I looked extremely fit and healthy, but internally, I was falling apart. And I suffered severely with eating disorders and body dysmorphia. And pretty much, I was working out twice a day. I was competing in powerlifting competitions. That was my whole career track. I was going to be a professional bodybuilder, a professional powerlifter. But in the background, I was binging on tens of thousands of calories at night, making myself throw up, going on these starvation diets. And if I wasn't perfect in my diet, I would enter these periods and cycles of shame and self-sabotage. So that continued on for years until I had this psychedelic experience, which I'm sure we'll go deeper into in this podcast, that completely I had a complete ego death where it completely shook and rocked my world, and I lost sense of who I was. And during that time, I became so disconnected from my body. I started also getting injured. And that's when my quote unquote spiritual awakening began, when I started to lose my identity with my body and started to find my identity with my soul.
So you said that you were feeling like shame and you didn't feel good internally. Where do you think that stemmed from? Like, I believe that there's a reason for everything or why you would feel that way. And typically, usually it would start in the childhood. So are you willing to open up about what could have contributed to that?
Absolutely. So I don't know if you know this, but I have a twin brother, and my little brothers are also twins.
I think maybe. I
Yeah.
don't know.
So
I feel like we knew a lot about each other at one point.
well, good catch up and refresh you here. I
Yeah.
have three brothers, two sets of twin boys that my mother had to raise pretty much by herself. And for the first 7 years of my life, it was very chaotic. My father was bipolar. He was an alcoholic, very abusive. Because I was the oldest, I got the brunt of that physical and emotional abuse. So through that, I started to isolate myself from the world. I started to gain weight and find comfort and safety through food, like a lot of emotional eating. And through that, I started to gain a lot of weight, which transpired into a lot of bullying in school. I was that kid to get pushed into lockers, had sodas dumped on my head. And I think what we're going back to the idea of fitness covering up an insecurity, I think I wanted to develop this hard shell to try to protect myself. So through trauma, through bullying, through abuse, I think that's where a lot of the shame came from. A lot of it was definitely from my father and how I felt like I was never enough, no matter what I did. I felt like I was unworthy of love. So that story of being unworthy continued to transpire in my life. And even though I was getting validation from the outside world in terms of my body, I still never felt worthy because that worthiness was always conditional. And that worthiness and that love that I was seeking, really, to the punchline, was I was looking for love from myself. So unless we get that love from ourselves, we're going to continue to feel that shame.
You explained that so well. And I actually think I remember the story. When when you're trying to talk about it, how you used to be, eating a lot and bullied in school and more like overweight and such. I am starting to remember like us having a conversation about that. But that takes a lot to also be mindful of like what happened and really and understanding that the feeling of unworthiness came directly from that. Like a lot of people still today would deny something like that.
Mhm.
So that took you definitely, a lot of courage and such. So let's go into your whole spiritual awakening when you said you had like a psychedelic experience. Was this before we reconnected?
I'm
Like a
not
while back?
I think this happened before, because correct me if I'm wrong, when we reconnected, this was like after I had let go of like the fitness persona and identity
Yes.
and started to go on my spiritual journey. So I think
It's
this was before we reconnected.
so go ahead. Let's go hear about the psychedelic story. We're all ears.
So to continue that story, I was supposed to compete in a powerlifting competition. I was supposed to break two world records
Mm-hmm.
in squat and deadlift by like miles. And I started to get injured. And the catalyst to that was a chiropractor that I went to who was adjusting my hip. And he ended up tearing my hamstring,
Mm-hmm.
dislocating my ankle, and putting my knee out of place. And being the gym addict that I was, I didn't stop training and I kept training because that's what my whole identity was. So I couldn't put it down.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept getting injured. So started injuring my back and my knees and started to just become so in pain that I had to cancel that powerlifting competition.
Mm-hmm.
And 6 months later, I actually found out that that chiropractor was fired for using cocaine on the job. So
Oh
funny
my
story. This
God,
guy
that's
was
so
all coked up.
scary.
This guy was all coked up and just trying to like pop some muscles out of place.
Oh my God, it's so
So
horrible.
I look back and I'm like, thank you. That was like a divine intervention from God, just like setting me on a new path.
No,
And
for real. What are the odds of that happening?
Very slim, but the universe is very funny in that way. So ended up getting injured and ending up in so much pain, canceled the powerlifting competition, and ended up going to my first music festival. And this was a music festival in Maryland. It was a camping music festival. And I had my first psychedelic experience with LSD.
Mhm.
And often when I tell this story, people are like, oh, did you take too much? Was it laced with something else? But it wasn't. It was just one tab of acid. And I was standing at a stage while listening to the music. And as you were speaking to before, I was very shy. I was very insecure. I was that type of person who just like stood at school down dances with my head forward, my shoulders hunched forward, and just very shy and insecure. So I was standing at that stage. Everybody was dancing. It felt like I was like in an alien spaceship. So I was just feeling so disconnected
Mhm.
from the world and from myself. And my friend Greg comes up to me. He's a very silly dude. He comes up to me, grabs me by the shoulders while I'm feeling very insecure and weird coming up on this acid. And he looks me in the eyes and says, Josh, you try to be this big macho man on the outside, but inside you're just a scared little child. And to this day, he doesn't remember saying that. And he's like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, I'm not.
Mhm.
That's what woke me up. And in that
Wow.
moment, it felt like my psyche fractured into a million different pieces. And I
Mhm.
started to spiral into this very, very dark place where all of the traumas, all of the insecurities, all of the inadequacies and stories that have been running my life underneath the surface that I had masked up with this persona of being fit and being strong started to all come up as my identity started to crumble. So I started to forget who I was. I forgot who my family was. I knew I had a mom, but I couldn't remember what she looked like. I knew I had a passion for fitness, but I couldn't remember why. I knew I was at a music festival. Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? And I
Mhm.
just started to spiral into this very paranoid place where I
Mhm.
started to have visions of me ending up in a psych ward and being schizophrenic for the rest of my life. I'm like, oh shit, this is what happens to people. They take too much psychedelics and they end up mentally fucked up, and that's going to
Mhm.
be me. So for the entire night, I spiraled and continued to lose myself and felt like I was a million miles inside of my own mind. And often with these experiences, these ego death experiences that people have with psychedelics, on the other side of it is this big revelation of who they actually are. That
Mhm.
didn't come for another 6 months. So I woke up the next morning completely disconnected from myself, in complete pain because of all the injuries. And I didn't know who I was because everything that I believed I was fell apart. I thought I was my body. I thought
Mhm.
I was my career path. I thought
Mhm.
I was how I looked. But then come to realize punchline, we're none of those things, right? We're not our body. We're not these identities. So all of that started to fall apart and I was left with nothing. It was just a clean slate. So going home, I didn't understand what a spiritual awakening was.
Mhm.
All I knew was I started to develop WebMD syndrome. And I started to look on WebMD, all my
Yeah.
symptoms were saying I have fibromyalgia, I had IBS, I had depression, I had anxiety. And I'm like, oh shit, I do have all these things. And I also felt schizophrenic because I was like hearing and seeing things
Mhm.
during this time. So I start doing research, and there's two sides of me. One side of me says, oh, you're going through a spiritual awakening because I'm watching all these like spiritual YouTube videos and influencers. All the symptoms were similar, but this was completely new to me. All I knew was Western medicine.
Mhm.
You're up. So I started
Mhm.
going to psychiatrists,
Mhm.
and they diagnosed me with depression, with anxiety, with PTSD, potentially bipolar disorder. Also went to doctors. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia and IBS.
Mhm.
So for these 6 months, I was chronically depressed. I
Mhm.
was suicidal. I couldn't get out of bed.
Mhm.
I was in constant chronic pain, inflammation in my body. I couldn't eat anything without my stomach flaring up, my digestive system flaring up. And they ended up putting me on medications. 2 weeks into the medications, I have this intuitive voice that starts speaking to me. Get off of these. You have to face your darkness. These aren't going to heal you. You have
Mhm.
to face what is inside of you. And I don't know where that voice came from. It was the voice of God or my inner being or my higher self or the universe, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
And I listened to it. I took the leap of faith because it was very clear to me that the people that I was looking at in the world who were numbed by medications weren't getting any better.
Mhm.
So I didn't want to be one of those people who was on medications for the rest of my life. I wanted to actually heal. So
Mhm.
I started researching plant medicines. I
Mm-hmm.
started finding mentors online. I started to find clarity of this new path. And then a friend invited me to have a mushroom ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
So during this mushroom ceremony, um, if you want to go deeper into that story, I will. But punchline of that was I spent the entire time processing trauma and crying and coming home to myself. And the next day, I all of the symptoms were gone. And I was on this like high flying disc of purpose and clarity and presence. And that's when I started meditating. That's when I started practicing yoga. That's when I started fasting. I
Mm-hmm.
became a vegan for a few years. I'm no longer vegan now, but during that period of time, I really started to take control of my own mind and my own healing path. And that's why the work that I do today is so focused on empowering people to be their own healer because we have that power within ourselves. So that was the start of my journey, but obviously we have many spiritual awakenings during this path. So that was the first one, but it's been a ride, Justine.
Yeah, no, I feel like when you said that we have multiple, I honestly feel like I was actually thinking that in my head as you were saying that. I was like, I feel like I've been through, but I feel like I've just been through so many different phases of my life that just came out of nowhere, like completely different phases. Like I have like my New Jersey life, and then I have my Disney the last 5 years where Disney came out of nowhere. That's a whole other
Mhm.
story. And
Yep.
then how I got clients, like my freelance website on Fiverr blew up randomly for my social media gig. So I took that leap of faith to go to become an entrepreneur. And then immensely a badass, like it's doing pretty well on Instagram. It's like growing every single day, and the reels are doing really well. So I think it's like telling me something that I'm doing this right. And can you talk about angel? Do you believe in the whole angel numbers and all of that?
To an extent, I
Yeah.
see it from a very simplistic lens. I like kind of see it for as like the universe winking at me.
I feel like I see it so often. Like
Yep.
the 111, I've been seeing a lot of 444 lately, and
Yep.
it gives me a lot of comfort, you know? And I was seeing them so much when I was going from my transition from Disney to being my own business owner. I like cried and everything. It was a lot. It was a lot. And so when I was going through that, I was like, I feel like this is hard, but it's like it has to happen. So I just feel like I just go through it different phases. And then do you ever feel like we always fear in our head, like, oh, like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life, and like always feel like you have to have like your whole life planned out. Like I feel like a lot of people think like that. And I actually saw this like TikTok where it's like we gotta stop like thinking that, oh, we gotta always kind of find like who are we in this, because we're always changing, we're always evolving, we're always growing. And then I'm like, that actually gave me so much comfort because I feel like my life changes like every 5 years.
That's so true. It's so true. It's not linear like this. If you're listening, it's not just like a straight line. It's more so like this, just very chaotic. It's very messy. The journey is very, very messy.
It is. And then I don't can I see people who have like the same career for like their whole life, and they literally do exactly what society says. I mean, I think deep down they're really not happy.
Of
But
course.
then there's like us where we go through all these like phases. And it's like, if you think about it, like at first we get all stressed out about it and anxiety. And it's like we're thinking, oh my God, what's wrong with our life? Or like I can never have my life together. But in reality, we have a freaking awesome life where we always get to experience and evolve and do new things all the time. And I think that's like the greatest gift.
1000%. And this is like a huge perspective shift and this is what I talk about. Like self-help is making you miserable because we're constantly comparing
Mm-hmm.
where we are to where other quote unquote spiritual influences are, and we're
Mm-hmm.
comparing our lives and our journeys to somebody else. But listen, just the fact that you have the ability to work on yourself is a freaking blessing, right? You know how many
Yeah.
people in the world don't know where their next glass of clean water is coming from? You know how many
True.
people in the world wake up every day wondering if a bomb is going to fall on their house? You know how many people in
Yeah.
the world live in the slums and are
Mm-hmm.
homeless, right? Just the fact that you get to work on yourself.
Yeah.
That's a gift and a privilege.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And and what you said is completely 100% true. And there's also been people here, in the US who, may wake up and not have to worry about, I mean, then again, who knows? There's a lot of weird stuff going on in the US lately, but and we didn't expect like the whole smoke thing in Jersey and Canada. But anyway, that's you gotta get my I'm kind of getting a little off. I need to cut that part out. Anyway, so my point is that I know people who are always in survival mode when it comes to having to pay the bills and having to work overtime, having to work like 12 hours a day. And like, even though they're not have to think, like, oh, one of my next glass of water, but it's still like they're like in auto their whole life. And it's like it's kind of like they don't have no idea what's going on in their surroundings. And I'm like, I see those people and I like hurt for them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I wish they could just get out of that. Like, I mean, what they say is like the rat race and stuff, but also it's like you and I, like, we're both business owners. So we do have, like, we can take time off right now for like an hour.
Yep.
And like I'm in between my work day and I'm like, okay, yeah, 3 o'clock. And I work from home. And I'm assuming you probably do the same thing.
Yep.
So it's such a privilege to be able to like have to be able to do that.
Yes.
You know, it's really cool that I can like turn off for work for like an hour to talk to you and do
Yep.
this.
Yep. 1000%. And although you may not be quote unquote in survival mode, like tangibly,
Mm-hmm.
to the nervous system, this is what trauma does to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're not in survival mode, even if your bills are paid, even if you have a job, even if you have a phone and a computer and a roof over your head, to the nervous system, you can still continue to perpetuate that victim story, that fight or flight, that survival mode,
Mm-hmm.
even when you're not in survival mode.
Mm.
Right. That's where self sabotage comes from, is when everything is fine to your nervous system and to your inner child who may still be carrying around traumas of unworthiness and I'm not good enough. If you grew up in poverty, right? I grew up where money was never enough. We were constantly moving around. So even when everything was fine, my nervous system still felt like everything was going to fall apart. Even today, I still work through it, right? Like even though everything's fine, I'm still teaching and training my nervous system to know I'm safe. You don't need to
Yeah.
move so fast. You can
Yeah.
slow down,
I'm
right?
still working on that
Even if you're
too.
not in survival mode tangibly, the nervous system doesn't know the difference, because if you're playing out these fears, you can constantly put yourself in survival mode just by thinking someone's going to judge you or thinking that you're going to fail at this job interview, right? Then you start to
Yeah.
put yourself back in survival mode. So that's why being aware of this is so important, and having tools to regulate your nervous system so you can teach yourself that I'm safe, that it's okay.
Yeah. So, since we're talking about that subject, I want to go to my question about mindfulness. So, I discovered mindfulness in, I would say, maybe like 20. I mean, of course, I've heard that word, but in 2016, I think I really took the time to actually work on that when I was watching a bunch of like YouTube videos and such. And I didn't realize like throughout life how asleep I was about how I was behaving. Do you ever like look at your Facebook like on this day and look at statuses from like
Uh-huh.
12 years ago? Some of my statuses are, I read it and my future self is like, what the heck? Like I
Yep.
was going through it, you know? Like I would say like craziest things around like 14 or 15-year olds. Like I know it's a teenager and such, but despite about a teenager or not, I like to read these statuses because I like to see, oh, so if I was upset about something, this is how I react to it. But I
Yep.
wouldn't react to it in that way. And I think back then I wasn't mindful of that.
Yes.
So do you believe, because when I tell people, about mindfulness, a lot of people I feel like think that it's something quick to learn, but I think it's like a practice. You're always constantly practicing to be very skilled at being mindful. Like
Yes.
like what's your take on that? Like you think it's something that can take like years to really master, or I want to hear
Takes
your opinion.
lifetimes. Takes a lifetime, right?
Yeah.
It's not a practice that you do to get a result.
Yeah.
Like you don't meditate to get good at meditating. You meditate to get good at life, right? So like it's a constant practice of bringing mindful awareness into every moment, into every action, into every emotion, into every behavior that we have, is really the devotion to living a mindful and intentional life. Most people, when they practice mindfulness, they're like, okay, I'm going to do this so I can get rid of my anxiety. And they think,
Mhm.
oh, now it's not working. So then they're
Yeah,
using
that's what I was saying. Yeah, like that.
exactly, because they're using it as another coping mechanism. And
Hmm.
these spirit, quote unquote, spiritual practices, breathwork, mindfulness, X, Y, and Z, can also be coping mechanisms, right? We use them to escape our emotions rather than to become mindful and present to them. So mindfulness is a way of life. It's a
Yeah.
devotion to being present.
Yeah. And I have a question for you. So I feel like you and I both have done so much work with, really mastering, being skilled and being mindful and changing the way we react to things because, at the end of the day, like anything, bad things can happen to us every single day. And it's all about knowing how to properly react to it because you have to protect your own like self peace and such. And there's like a lot of people in the world who has not taken the initiative to really work on that and practice that. Do you ever
Yeah.
find yourself like, or it could just be me and I need to work on it myself, but do you ever find yourself frustrated with if you're around people who I guess would react so negative to like an external stimuli? I guess it's like the proper word for it. Or I guess are you like a more patient? I think you're kind of more like your level of your like practice basically where I feel like I mean between me and you know, I like to practice certain things that you do too, but you're obviously on a different level than I am. So would you say you're finding yourself more patient and
Yeah, I would say that there is no levels, right? Like
okay,
this
that's fair.
this idea of, and this is where I feel like the whole conversation of self-help is making you miserable,
Mm-hmm.
comes in as like the comparison game, like thinking that there isn't
Okay.
a level. And that's why we project our frustrations and judgments onto other people who aren't quote unquote awake,
Mm-hmm.
instead of just the place that I've come to, it's taken a lot of work. It's just like true unconditional compassion, right? Like compassion for other people, of like trusting that everybody is doing the best that they can in their journey. That
Mm-hmm.
maybe people haven't quote unquote woken up yet. And I get to walk around with the compassion of knowing, oh, that person's being reactive. I was that point of in one life, in some point in my life too. Right. So, and it's taken
Yeah.
work, and maybe these people haven't gotten there yet, but I have just like this deep, unwavering faith that everybody is in their own process. Everybody's going to wake up in their own timing, and the universe is more intelligent than me.
Yeah. You really stumped me with the whole like level thing and with the whole self-help thing. You got me there.
Mhm.
I love being stumped because I like to be um I like to keep learning and really have my eyes open, and I feel like I'm learning a lot from this whole conversation, and of course everyone that's like listening to this. So it's just such a great feeling. Like I love when I mean it's not like you're saying oh you're wrong, but you're like educating me. Does that make sense?
For sure.
I just
You're
think I didn't know
you're
how to another
completely
way to like
wrong.
I just think I didn't know how to explain what I was trying to say. I think that's where like my issue was is that I have a hard time like I know what I want to say, but how do I like explain it? So I guess in my brain when you're taught about like levels and stuff like that, I guess that's how I like explained it to you, but I just didn't know any other way of explaining it.
I get it.
But
I
yeah.
get it. And listen, there certainly are levels of this path and this journey, right? It's just like it
Yeah.
becomes limiting when we start to see ourselves as farther back and like a less than level, because then we're perpetuating that same not good enough and less than story that came from childhood, right? And then we take that and it transitions into our personal development journeys where we think that there's somewhere to get to, right? And a lot of my journey in personal development has been this like neurotic need to be perfect in order to change and grow and prove myself of being worthy, X, Y, and Z. And
Mhm.
over my journeys through different plant medicines and deeper embodiment within myself, I started to realize, wait, I already am everything that I'm trying to become.
Mhm.
I was created as whole, worthy, and complete. Now, through the traumas of life, I started to create these false stories that I wasn't good enough. And now, in our spiritual lives and our personal development journeys, we're trying to prove ourselves of being good enough. We're trying to get to the quote unquote next level. But what if we already are everything that we're trying to become? And if we can just give ourselves patience and recognize that we're exactly where we need to be, then we can remove some of the pressure, right? And bring some fun back into the journey, bring some play back into the journey. So many of us are taking this journey of healing and personal development so seriously, right? I need to meditate every day. And if I don't, then I'm unworthy. I need to get to the next level. Otherwise, I'm going to be left behind, right? So then we're holding on, we're contracting instead of just opening up and trusting the flow of life, where we can play, we can laugh, we can love, we can connect, we can
Mhm.
express ourselves and find joy in where we are in our process and stop trying to get to a destination. It's cliche, but it's a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So I have one follow-up question on that because you were saying how people put okay, if I don't meditate one day, I'm gonna feel unworthy. And I definitely agree that people definitely shouldn't. I mean, people can feel whatever they feel, of course.
Yep.
But it's definitely toxic to have that kind of have that feeling if you miss like one day of mindfulness. A lot of times people in these like self-help like niches, they talk a lot about discipline. So what
Mm.
is your take on that? Because I mean, my personal opinion, I do feel like humans, like, let's say they have a goal in life
And I just like, I feel like it's good to have goals, like healthy ones. Now,
Yep.
but if obviously if you don't make that goal at a certain period of time, to never like to not feel down about it. Like I've had certain goals mentally badass and I didn't reach them, and I'm not gonna cry about it because it's okay, you know? Like there's no reason to cry about it. I'm still growing. It's going, you know? Um, so what is your opinion about people working on practicing discipline and all of that?
Mm.
Hey, listener, if you have come this far into the podcast episode, I hope that you are enjoying it. And also, I would love if you guys are listening on Apple Podcasts, if you could leave a review. It helps so much in the algorithm to get our podcast pushed to new listeners. And if you're on Spotify, if you can follow us on there, that would be truly amazing. And the more you guys share, the more that we grow in this podcast. And the more we grow, the more episodes we can put out for you guys. So, yes, thank you so much for listening. And now back to the episode.
We'll look at our relationship to discipline.
Okay.
Right. Who were the first people in our lives to discipline us?
Parents.
Parents in the school system.
Yes.
Right. Many people haven't had loving and compassionate parents to discipline and guide us in healthy ways. We were disciplined by what? Being punished. Right. So discipline, our relationship to discipline in our lives then becomes this self-punishing mechanism. And I'm not saying this is the case for everyone, and I'm not shitting on discipline at all, but we need to look at language in our relationship to this thing that we're trying to apply, because many people who are trying to be disciplined, it's coming at the expense of their own inner peace and their own worthiness, right? If I'm not disciplined, then I'm not worthy. And that leads to the shame cycle. So I chose to let go of needing to be disciplined, and I took on devotion. So devotion over discipline. So let's look at the difference of these words. Discipline is your commitment to actions that you are taking. Devotion is your commitment to values that you are making important in your life, right? So now values, let's say you're trying to be, your discipline is working out and eating healthy. Now you're human, right? You're human and you're not going to be perfect. And one day you might miss a workout, and one day you might have a slice of pizza. That doesn't mean that you're less devoted to health. But if you're only focused on discipline, then you're going to start to take on the stories that you are not disciplined. But if you look at it more in a broad range of, wait, do I still value my health? Yes. So I'm overarching in my life, I am still devoted to health. I'm still devoted to mindfulness. I'm still devoted to being a good person. I'm still devoted to being a loving person. So I don't need to be perfect. So I've let go of the need to be disciplined and chose to be devoted. And the funny thing about that, Justine, is I'm more disciplined now. But not because I'm trying to prove anything, but just because I've let go of the pressure around it. And these behaviors come from a place of inspiration. They come from a place of being of service to myself, not you have to do this.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good answer. Instead of using the word discipline, using devotion. And it also just sounds a lot more positive.
Yes.
Because you're right with the word discipline. I mean, me personally, I don't think of the whole how I used to get yelled at and punished anymore, but I think I think I've kind of taken that part out. That's just me personally, but like I'm sure a lot of people could be thinking exactly what you're saying. But also the word devotion is just, I don't know, just does sound nicer.
It's a good word, right?
Yeah, so good. I think that should just like that statement should just go viral. You should make a post about it. That's a good post idea.
Make devotion viral.
Yeah, no, I think just for your like social media, so that'll be a good like post to talk about. You know what I mean? I don't know, just an idea. Okay. So let's talk about, we kind of went from I feel like we kind of went to a whole different like route. So let me see what we can chat about now. Let's talk more education about plant medicine. I love this topic. So there's CBD, THC, kava, kratom. Am I missing anything else?
Ayahuasca, psilocybin, ibogaine.
Yeah, you're very educated on all of that. So okay, I'm trying to find like a really good, I feel like it's so much, and I feel like we could talk like 5 hours about it because you probably have so much knowledge. But before we go into that, how did you get all your knowledge? Are you like self-taught? Do you like you said you were looking at mentors at one point.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my journey has been my own search for answers, right? And that's the beautiful thing about the world that we live in today. You're one Google search away from finding an answer that you're looking for. You're one Facebook group away from finding community, right? You're one event away from finding people that you can connect with and learn from. And there's been so many teachers in my life, but most of my journey has been my own internal exploration, my own search for answers, reading books. But I, over the years, have done a lot of work sitting in plant medicine ceremonies. I lived in an ayahuasca retreat center for about 6 months, apprenticing
Oh, that's cool.
and helping facilitate ceremonies. I got certified as a trauma-informed plant medicine facilitator. I'm also a combo practitioner. Me and my wife, we facilitate ceremonies here in Orlando. So it's certainly been a journey, but I wouldn't have been, you can't learn about this stuff from a podcast or a book, right? Like you can learn the knowledge about it, but it's one completely different thing to experience it for yourself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I feel like, I've just been really into kava lately, just because my boyfriend's been working for that company. But I also do have a client that sells like CBD and THC online, and also like in smoke shops and stuff. So that's like where I kind of like started learning more. So do you use any of them like on like the regular, just like kind of like more like a personal question?
Yeah, I over the past few months, I have let go of cannabis, which has been a beautiful teacher for me. I have so much love and respect for the medicine of cannabis, but I stopped smoking because I felt like it was slowing me down and kind of holding me back. But I have started to really love kava and kratom, being mindful of not using it too much because I do from the past have an addictive personality. So just being mindful of that. But over the years, I have lessened my need or use of plant medicines. But they've given me so many lessons. They've helped me heal so much. And one thing that I want to say here is plant medicines are not going to save you. And I feel like we have to take plant medicine and put them in two different categories, right? There's the plant medicine of like the herbalism side of like kava and all these different herbs and different plants that aren't psychoactive. But then there's the plant medicine side of the psychedelics that really provide a very spiritual healing experience. For that side of things, they're not necessary. And I think a lot of people go to them as an escape. But they've been such a pinnacle in my journey of becoming who I am. And I'm such an advocate for these psychedelics and plant medicines.
Yeah, right now I feel like I just started with the kava about literally 3 months ago when he started working there. I feel like it's really helps me a lot with like creativity. Like it depends on like which one I take. Like this one that I'm drinking right now is actually meant to like relax yourself. So it makes me like more calm, and it just helps me a lot with like anxiety. It really calms down my whole like nervous system like at the time I'm having it. And CBD always does really well for me. I haven't had the best experience with THC though. Okay, let's transition into biohacking. I'm very fascinated. I did a quick Google search, and did it have anything to do with, I think from my memory, was it thing with like food, with healing and such, or am I wrong?
Could be. Food is definitely a part of biohacking.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Cool.
Take it
So
away.
biohacking has become this like very glamorized word in today's social media world, right? Like, what is it really? What we need to understand first about biohacking is that the best biohack is taking care of your body, right? Everybody's looking for the secret to health and energy and vitality and focus and productivity and creativity. But often the best things that we can do are the simple things, right? Sleeping. Sleeping is probably the best biohack you can do, right? Meditating, great biohack for regulating the nervous system. Ice baths and cold showers, incredible. I do them every day, right? Food, the food that we're eating, you can't do any of these biohacking practices. They're not going to make any difference unless you have a high vibrational diet of whole foods, like living foods that are allowing your body to be operating in its optimal way, right? So our bodies are naturally inclined to be very healthy. We are naturally healthy and energized, but it's the things that we are adding into our life, the distractions, the fried and processed foods, the dyes and the chemicals and the toxins in our food, our lack of sleep, our overuse of technology that's really hindering our energy and our focus. So first off, starting like we have to remove the things that are hindering our body's natural ability to be healthy and to be in vitality. Right. So often this journey is about removing the things that are preventing you from being as healthy as you can be, rather than adding something else in. Right. So is it weed? Is it tobacco? Is it nicotine? Are you smoking a vape? Are you not getting any sleep? Are you using your screen too often? Right. So are you eating too much processed foods? So that's the first place to look, is like, what is draining your energy? And then in terms of the other side, what is going to give you energy, these biohacking principles? Sure, ice baths are amazing, right? There's great supplements that can be beautiful for supporting brain health and nervous system and immune health. But really the basics of movement, sunlight, hydration, sleep, that's really the places to start.
I've been doing that this whole time. I didn't even realize it. I've been biohacking. I'm a huge I biohack a lot, and I'm like literally the one that's going around like always getting like if I go to like let's say a friends or whatever, I see so much like processed food and everything. I had like a lot of stomach issues in like 2017. I had like a whole surgery, like appendicitis is could be common, but I also do a lot of doctors are like, oh, this stuff just happens. You know, you kind of grow up and people think, oh, if someone's sick, it just happens. It just happens. Like, I don't believe in that. Like, there's a
No,
reason
definitely
where
not. Yep.
why people are getting sick, why people have stomach issues, why people have this disease, this, that. Like, I mean, for me, I don't know why I have glaucoma in my eye. I still today do not understand that. Like, but I mean, there's always a reason for everything.
Yep.
And I think for someone who had chronic illness since I was born, I mean, I had the cataract and glaucoma and everything. I think that just probably maybe changed my mind where I'm just like, I was like given this illness and I probably, who knows, I don't know, maybe something could have triggered it and I wasn't aware. But now I'm like so big on what I eat and what I put in my body. And it's like, I think actually maybe you were also someone that really helped me with this like a while back. I think you told me when we're having one of our deep conversations and you were saying, oh, the government's like trying to kill us or something like that.
My conspiracy theorist days.
Yeah. That's what it was. It was during those days. Yeah. No, but like it stuck with me. And I think a lot of times I feel like I've learned so much from you. And when I talk to people and stuff like this, I always feel like, oh yeah, I had a friend named Josh and I literally still bring you up to like people like throughout my life. If I have like a kind of
Oh,
deep
that's
combo
awesome.
like this, I always bring you up because like a lot of the stuff that you told me, it like stuck in my head, you know? And
Mm,
it's just because like it's really it's really hard sometimes to find somebody who I can have a conversation like this with.
sure.
You
Absolutely.
know, like I know I don't blame anybody for not being able to be able to open up like us and talk like this, of course, because it's everyone's going through whatever. Like as you were saying, like I don't get upset when people can have these conversations with me, but I'm just like I every time I find somebody and have these conversations, I'm like, okay, I gotta keep them close because
Sure.
these kind of
Absolutely.
conversations like keep me alive. Like
Yep. 1000%. So anybody
like
listening, you're not crazy. Think you're
it,
crazy. You're not crazy. And that's the
it
great thing about podcasts like this, right? People don't have friends. Like they can tune into podcasts like this to
I do
remind.
that.
Yep. Exactly. Of
Yeah. Do you listen to do you know Jay Shetty?
course. Love Jay
Yeah,
Shetty.
every person I ask are like, yeah, absolutely. I know exactly who that is. He's great.
Yep.
And I listen to him because he like opens up my mind to a lot of different things. And it's just that's a lot of reason why I listen to podcasts as well and why I wanted to create one. I was like, I think this is a great opportunity to have these conversations and people can find it and realize, like as you were saying, oh no, we're not crazy. Like there's people out there like us.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, so anyway, so I was going back to what you were saying. I remember we are talking and you were saying how like how the government you were having that whole conversation how the government's killing us and all of that. And I actually do see this conversation being spoken about on TikTok a lot lately. Like the whole conspiracy theories. And I'm watching this and I'm like, oh, I heard it first from Josh. But
There. Yeah.
You're
They're
so
kill-
right though.
they're killing us, but they're killing us slowly so they can first pump us of profits. They make us sick. They get us hooked on pharmaceutical medications. They make us depressed, so we have to play in capitalistic, consumerist America so we can buy things to try to make ourselves look cool to impress people that we don't even like.
Yeah.
And that's the whole game, right? It's a perfectly designed system to make us lifelong customers of medications and materialistic items.
Right. And then I just feel like this whole theory, what you're saying, which honestly I think it's facts, it's not really a theory, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
for sure.
Because it's just so there's so many like evidence of it, you know? It's like think about it, like why are certain foods with certain chemicals that is known to connect to cancer, to cause stomach issues, to cause diseases, like why is it in our foods, like why is it approved, you know what I mean? And then like also like the whole pharmaceutical, how expensive it is. It's not like it isn't like in other countries it's not as ridiculous as the US, so it's like come on, people need to wake up. So it's like how can we get out of this stupid thing of like the government trying to kill us? It's like there are options out there and companies that actually do care about human beings. Like for example, I mean, obviously it depends where you shop, and but I mean, I don't know what your opinion about Trader Joe's. Some people have like yes and no, like oh, it's not like it's horrible, but it's also like the best. Like
Sure.
I like, but also like there's Whole Foods, but it's also kind of expensive. But it's like also you can also be buying simple things,
For
you
sure.
know, which is why a
100%.
lot of people's grocery bills are like, I mean, right now we do have inflation, so it is valid that grocery is expensive right now. But before that, like when I was grocery shopping for myself, I was spending like maybe $50 a week on
Yeah.
groceries. And it's because I was buying like whole ingredients. I was
Yep.
buying like vegetables and fruit and meat and just basic
Yep.
ingredients to keep myself alive, to feed myself. Well, there are people who are don't want to take the time to cook and they're just buying a bunch of like box stuff that's highly processed. And did you, by the way, did you know, did you hear about this app called Yuka?
No.
Oh, it's amazing. So yeah, so Yuka is pretty, so you know how like if you go through grocery stores, like I'm one of those people that would like check like, okay, what's in this bread? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yuka, like if you scan the barcode, it gives it like a grade and it tells you like what ingredients that can harm your
Yep.
body, and it gives you like a
Agree.
whole like description. It's you would love it. It's
Yep.
free. I feel like you would love that.
Is it yuca like yuca fries?
Yuka.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I have another app like that. Apps like that are great. And if you want to just make it simple, eat real food, right? Eat whole
Yeah.
food. Like you're not going to scan an apple, like an organic apple. And just to bring this in, because I know that this conversation can be very anxiety and fear provoking for people because then we walk through the world like, is anything safe? Like, because
Yeah.
it's in our deodorants, it's in our perfumes, it's in our makeup, it's in our shampoo, it's in our water, it's in everything. And
Mm-hmm.
then we start to develop this fear of it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that fear we can transmute into just mindfulness and awareness. But we also need to remember that we're all going to die,
Yeah.
right? We're all dying currently. We're about an hour closer to death since this conversation started. So, do you want to go through your life being afraid of everything,
Yeah.
or go through your life being happy? So, like, yes, I am mindful of everything that I eat, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
also not one of those people who is super afraid of everything.
Oh yeah. No, I'm definitely not afraid. It's just I think it's more of not fearing of death. Like I don't, to be honest with you, I don't fear death. I'm the kind of person where it's like if it's my time, it's my time. You
Sure.
know, like it's inevitable. Death is inevitable. I mean, you can be as safe as you want, but in reality, I mean, like think about it. Like someone could just like jump into my window right now and shoot me in the face. Like it, it,
1,000.
it's like you don't, you know. And I just believe that when like there was times where like for example if I was 1 second away from like a intersection, there was someone that actually like went through the light,
Mm-hmm.
and if I was 2 seconds further up, that could have T-boned me and I could have
Yep.
died.
1,000.
So what's what I'm thinking, I'm just like you can't be fearing everything. Let's say if I go on a roller coaster, I'm scared, like if it's gonna break and kill me, like okay, it's my time. Like same thing with like flying on an airplane and stuff like that. Like you just you never know. You can't like not live life, you know?
Mhm.
Um, So that's kind of how I think it's more of me just like not wanting to feel like garbage every day.
Of course. Of course.
That's more of what it is. And then also like I do have a diagnosis of bipolar. So typically if I'm having processed foods and everything, I my symptoms flare. Like
Hmm.
the depression gets worse, the anxiety gets worse. And so I think that's why I'm like so big on eating those kind of foods and
So
being
interesting, right? Even people who aren't diagnosed
yeah.
bipolar, if they eat those foods, they get depressed, they get anxious, right?
Yeah. Exactly. So that's kind of like more of my take, but yeah, but yours is definitely have the yours is definitely makes sense too. I want to know what made you choose Orlando, Florida?
Hmm. It's a good question. So me and my wife moved to Florida about 2 years ago during the pandemic.
Hmm.
And um, we originally moved to Ormond Beach, and I came down here to open up a retreat center. That didn't work out. Ended up moving in with my partner, who is now my wife.
Hmm.
And we just looked around Florida. We moved from Ormond Beach to St. Pete. Thought we were going to find our people in St. Pete. St. Pete is beautiful, but we came to Orlando because we started to meet this beautiful community over here. So once you're back in the area, would love to introduce you to some really amazing people.
I'm excited now knowing that you're there. I feel like you and your wife, even my boyfriend, will get along so well.
Absolutely. 1000%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of the Orlando area in terms of like I miss one thing I loved about Jersey and the New York area is like the mountains and the nature preserves and being able to go hike up Ramapo Mountain or Watchung and
There's hiking places in Orlando. But I get what you're saying with the mountain
really
part.
like, they're very flat and swampy.
Okay, fair.
The springs are nice. So I do like we're close to a lot of springs. Don't really like the constant traffic and the touristy area of Disney, but
Mhm.
I like it here. The people are what make it.
Yeah, I miss Orlando so much. Like, I feel like when I'm there, I feel like I'm at home, you know? So I'm like super excited to go
You
back.
love Disney.
What?
You still love Disney as much as you loved it back then?
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, the reason I left Disney is because of not because of the company, but because of the kind of the nature of the job that I was in. You know, like working in a customer service job, getting yelled at every single day, like 20 times a day, being cursed out, being pressured in this. It just wasn't meant for a human being to be like attached to a headset 8 hours a day and being yelled. It was horrible. But that's like a whole other story. But I miss the community of Disney, you know? But like I there's a reason why I like got up and like left New Jersey and went there. They made me feel, if anything, I think out of every community in my life that I've been a part of, they have made me feel the most accepted.
Mm, yeah.
I think that's what it is. It's like people have so many opinions about Disney. There's so much like there's so much you can say about. I feel like I should literally like talk with someone.
That's a huge rabbit hole.
It is because there's so many people out there that look down at Disney, but it's like I always when these people look down on Disney, I always ask them, I'm like, well, have you ever worked for Disney? Have you ever been inside the Disney bubble? And they always say no. And I'm like, that's because like I feel like when you work for Disney, you have a whole different perception of the company. I mean,
Sure.
I'm not saying Disney is like perfect. Oh, and like they're a perfect company and everything like that. Like, I mean, there's so many flaws of the company as well. But I mean, between all the companies I've worked for, they were the least toxic.
Hey, they make some great movies.
Yeah. Yeah, they make some great movies. They have some awesome theme parks. And it's just their culture too. You know what I
Sure.
mean? So and I've also just met some of the most amazing people.
Mm.
I actually like my last person I interviewed was actually my former boss. Yeah, so we had a good, yeah, she's fantastic and she's helped me a lot with like growth and such. So,
Yeah.
it's just their whole culture and the whole way that they run their company, you know, like for example, they don't call like their like our bosses like managers, like they call them leaders because they don't want it to be seen as in like oh, we're just like they're just there to just manage the operations. Like, no, they want to be there to like help you grow
Yep.
with your career, with personal, and they do that. At least where I worked, like, I mean, it really, I mean, I can only tell my story and my particular experience because I know there's cast members that have had horrible experiences. And it's
Mm.
because they've had horrible leaders. And it's just, it's not, I don't blame the company. It's just at the end of the day, it's the kind of person you are.
Sure.
And Disney
Absolutely.
usually does do a pretty good job, really like that, like, the recruitment team usually do a great job with like figuring out, okay, like who will be a good fit and be the right person to fit into our culture and our community. But there's always human error.
1000%.
And that's just it. But I mean, honestly, I sometimes think like, when I move back to Orlando, maybe I want to do like a seasonal thing, like in the holidays, and just, I don't know, work in the parks or whatever, just like not for the money, just to like be part of the community. I miss it. I kind of miss going in for free too. That was pretty nice.
Right.
But I just miss, like, I'm so grateful for my job and like being my own boss and whatever, but it sometimes does get lonely because I'm like working from home. I don't get much like human interaction. Like I sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I need to leave. It's like, it's also not good for mental health. You need to get out and talk to people and such. And so I kind of do miss like going to a job and like seeing people and such. So I was like, okay, I left Disney on good terms. So I'm hoping like maybe if I can just like do a seasonal thing and just like when they're really looking for people, and I don't care if I'm working like merchandise or whatever. It doesn't matter what the job is. I mean, to be honest, I don't want to work custodial. That's the only job I would say no to. That's because I'm not good with throw up or cleaning up. Like, things like that. Like that stuff I'm like, okay, I have to like put my foot down for that kind of job. But like I don't mind doing like the quick service and like the merchandise and stuff like that, just being part of the magic.
Maybe you'll run the mental health department at Disney. Right.
Actually, they asked me because we had like when I was working in the offices, we had like weekly meetings, and one segment was a diversity one. So we'll learn like a new thing, and then 1 week was mental health. So they actually asked me to make a PowerPoint for them. And then I ended up calling in that day because I was depressed, and I was like really upset, but I was.
Like I know I'm supposed to do this talk on mental health, but I need to take care of my mental health.
Yes. So when I was so upset with myself because like I was so excited to present it and to like talk about it in our meeting about mental health, and I was like, really, like, but that was a dark time in my life. But
the brain can self-sabotage us in very tricky ways.
I did. I wish I can, but yeah, but apparently it went well. So that was good. Okay. Last topic before we wrap this up, because it's going to turn into like a 3-hour conversation.
Good.
When did you always think in your head that the whole self-help is kind of like, I mean, you didn't word it as like, oh, it's BS or something. Like, I don't think that wasn't your wording on your Facebook post, but, that was kind of like the vibe I got when I was reading it. So what kind of like triggered that thought? Like, when was that moment?
So I'm not saying the whole concept of personal development is wrong. I love reading books. I love learning, but the way that we go about it, is a big difference, right? So for example, take two people who are eating healthy. One person is eating healthy because they are doing it because they love themselves. It's a way to nourish themselves and take care of themselves, and they enjoy feeling good. But then another person, like me in the past, is super rigid and needs to eat healthy, and it's carrying a lot of shame, right? So this is where personal development can make you miserable if it's coming from the place of I am not good enough as I am, so I need to change in order to make myself good enough, right? And yes, we listen to podcasts are great, books are great, but if we're spending all of our time listening to other people and not listening to ourselves, then we're missing the greatest value that we can ever get, which is the connection to ourselves, right? I'm sure many people listening, including myself in the past, constantly have a podcast going, constantly are watching YouTube videos, constantly are reading books, and are constantly taking other people's voices and putting it inside of themselves instead of listening to their own intelligence. But I truly believe that there is a magnificent and powerful and beautiful and creative leader inside of every single human being. But most people don't spend the time to even get to know themselves on that intimate level, right? And that's why I stopped seeing meditation as meditation, and I just started to see it as a practice to get to know myself, right? Take a relationship. Take your current relationship. Do you think you would have a good relationship, an intimate relationship with your partner, if every time you were with him, you were listening to podcasts or watching YouTube videos or reading books and scrolling through social media, and you never spent any quality time with him?
No, that'd be horrible.
Right, exactly. But that's what we're doing in our own lives, right? We're listening to everybody else and distracting ourselves with everybody else, but not spending intimate, sacred time with ourselves, And I have started to get more value and more wisdom out of just sitting in silence with myself and starting to connect with my own wisdom, starting to listen to my own inner voice speaking, and starting to realize, wait, like there is a powerful leader inside of me too. I don't need to constantly look for other people to tell me what to do. And this goes back to the conversation of you already are everything that you're trying to become. So this journey of personal development is more a journey of remembering and revealing and reclaiming more than it is a journey of becoming, right? We think we need to become our future selves, but that future self, that powerful leader, that creative being inside of you is already there just waiting to come out. But we need to make contact with it. We need to get present to it, and we need to start to connect with it. That's why my 3 pillars of my program is intention, integrity, and intimacy. Right? Intention is living a life of intention, of consciousness, of mindfulness, of making intentions and commitments of who you are going to be and what you're going to do. Integrity is the ability to follow through on those commitments and live a life of devotion and discipline. But intimacy is the act of connecting with yourself. Right? Intimacy, a great word play on intimacy is into me I see. Right? Into me I see is how we develop intimacy. With another person, you develop intimacy with another person by into me you see, right? I'm giving you an insight into myself, then you start to get to know people on a deep and intimate level. But how often do we spend intentional quiet time with ourselves? That idea of being alone with yourself scares the shit out of a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
Right? Even for 5 minutes, people are like, oh, I can't do that. Why? Are you afraid?
Jay Shetty had a whole thing about that, actually.
Yep, exactly. And this is the secret. And it's not a secret because it's been passed down for thousands of years for a reason. Like this is the key unlock to a life of true everlasting peace and power and potential is presence. So even if you don't have a meditation practice, just 5 minutes a day. Start with 5 minutes a day. I do an hour a day. But really connecting with yourself, I have made the real foundation of my life and my devotion is to connect with myself and trusting that everything else will flow from that space. Because the greatest illusion, Justine, is that we need to do more in order to be more. But in reality, if you be more, the doing will flow effortlessly from that space.
Yeah, it's true.
We are human beings, not human doings. So be more.
That's awesome. So before we end, I do want to put a spotlight on exactly what you do. So you do, you say you have retreats, you also do coaching and such. Yeah, kind of just going to give you the mic right here and just tell my audience exactly what you do.
Absolutely. Okay. So what I do is I help people reconnect with and reclaim their power and teach people how to be their own healers by reflecting back to them that you already are enough, that you have the tools and the wisdom inside of you to live a peaceful, powerful, and prosperous life. So through that, there's many means of doing that through cleansing and detoxing the body, through connecting with ourselves through practices like breathwork and meditation, by having rituals and routines in our life that allow us to show up for ourselves in a powerful way and slow down so we can be able to connect with ourselves. And through that is a lot of coaching where I do a lot of shadow work with people of helping people get it and getting to know themselves and understanding their limiting beliefs and how to really break through those addictions and those limiting beliefs and heal anxiety and depression from the inside out. But we also do a lot of in-person transformational experiences. We host combo ceremonies, which is indigenous amphibian medicine. It's not a plant. It comes from the frog in the Amazon. I am a somatic breathwork practitioner as well. So I do use breathwork to help people heal and process and transmute trauma. And we also have a microdosing program. So we work with psilocybin microdoses and helping people create that ritualistic practice in their daily life with other practices like breathwork, meditation, and other rituals and practices. So if you want to learn more about what I do, my website is transformationalmedicine.life, or you can find me on Instagram at It's Josh Rose.
Yeah, I'm going to link all of that in the description. Well, thanks so much for being on my podcast. I'm really happy that, we had this conversation and I feel like I've learned so much from you, and I'm really hoping that my whole audience has, learned a lot as well. But before we really end it here, what is last piece of advice that you would like to just leave with my audience right now?
Slow down.
Question. Okay.
Slow down, because you already are enough. You have always been enough, and you always will be enough. So slow down. You are on time. You are exactly where you're meant to be, going through everything that you're meant to be going through, and whatever challenges or pains or tragedies you are experiencing in your life. Explore and get curious as to how they are happening for you and not to you. All of my greatest blessings have not come from the good moments in life, but the hard times in life. So if you're going through a hard time, get ready, because there's something powerful that's trying to come through you.
Yes, that is so great, because that is so true. The greatest things that happen in life, I feel like there's always like a whole thunderstorm and rain, and then like something comes, and it's like always out of nowhere too. Santa
delivers presents in the dark.
Love that. And that is what we're leaving on. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening, and stay tuned for next week's episode.